I'm going to show you a very basic composite loop to tie intruders, not just intruders, single station, double station intruders, all kinds of steelhead flies. A composite loop it sounds complicated, and you can make it complicated. And let's say you can make it complicated, you can make it creative, amazing. You can also make it pretty plain. The idea behind the composite loop, so first of all, if I just put this wad of dubbing in there, I'm just spinning a loop. Now, if I just add more dubbing, it's still just a spun loop. But if I start adding material oriented at a 90-degree angle, it's transverse, it's obverse, it cuts across, it's kind of like a hackle, then I think that is where you come into the area of calling it a composite loop. Now, I am not an expert. There are plenty of people that know a lot more about using composite loops than I do, but I'm the guy you got here, so I'm going to do my best, and that's the name of the game. So to spin a composite loop, you start with a base of material. An ice dub happens to make a really nice material. Hare's ear, hare's dubbin. There are a lot of materials that don't work because they're too coarse or they're too fine. Ice dub happens to work really well. And are there others? Sure. Senyo's fusion dub works. But I'm going to use ice dub right here. And then I'm gonna reach around, and one of the materials that really works pretty easily is Senyo's Predator Wrap. And I have a little piece here. So let me, for example, and I'm not even that good at tying composite loops. I usually make them pretty simple, but here's an example of what it would look like to put ostrich in a composite loop. There's some people that are really good at this. I'm not one of them, but I can talk about how you do it. In this case, I want the long fibers to be out here, so the butts of the ostrich are, my thread's going to, in theory, go right down the center here. And then these long wispy tips are going to be out. Now with this Senyo Predator Wrap, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. And I don't know how this is going to come out, but we're going to try it. We're going to pretend you and I are just doing this experiment right together. I'm going to let the Predator Wrap go out both sides about equal distance. So whether your material go out both sides, equal distance both sides, or more out one side or the other, that's one of the factors you have to consider. So without getting more complicated, because I'm probably already in trouble here, I'm going to put some, you got to put a top layer on. You have your base layer, and you need a top layer. What happens if you don't? Well, if you don't, you won't be able to pick this up and put it in your loop. So I'm not putting very much on there. Just oops. Just a little bit. Now, we're going to have the fun part here, and I just hope you will laugh along with me. I've got my OPSD dubbing spinner. It isn't the only kind you can use. Now, people want to know what kind of thread to use. Some people won't use anything but a Danville 210 white. This is actually pretty fine. This is this is a 6/0 Danville's. The thread is up to you. The problem with, if you use a light thread like this, if you wind it too tight, it's gonna break. So I'm reaching down with my left hand. I'm trying to pull this whole wad toward me without having it come apart, and then I just try to fold it into that loop and close the loop behind it. And how did I do? Well, let me move my thread spool out of the way. I'm not sure I did so well. Maybe I'm okay. Now, if you're good at this, these fibers will be kind of equally spaced. I haven't done this in a while, so this is a little bit rugged, but we're going to try this. Now, there's all kinds of ways this can go wrong, but I'm going to I'm going to hold this thread tight. I'm going to spin my spinner, and then I'm going to release the thread. So what have I got here? It's not bad. Is it perfect? Nope. It's not perfect. But I've got a base of dubbing that's nice chartreuse and shrimp pink. And I've got some buggy little fibers sticking out. Now, to wrap this, some people like to fold it and get all these fibers going the same way. And one of the ways to do that is to get your fingers wet. And you basically, I'm not getting my fingers wet. I'm just kind of pressing this back. See, I'm trying to get the fibers all on this side. So I kind of achieved that. Now, of course, once I start wrapping, they want to go their own way. So I'm gonna try to finesse it. With each turn, I'm using both the fingers of both hands to keep those fibers, the long, wiggly, buggy fibers, pointed towards the rear of the fly. Now, the super expert composite loop spinners, if you're watching this, forgive me. I'm doing the best I can. So, I've got that wrapped. I'm going to get my thread back here, and I'm going to go around my thread about 3 times. I'm going to pull these fibers out of the way, and then secure my dubbing loop and trim it off. Now, I've seen people spin composite loops that they're literally works of art. This loop has some butt fibers poking out, and some, this is interesting. But I assure you, I am confident I'd fish this. Steelhead will like it just fine. And you'll have a lot of motion, you'll have volume, and you'll have motion. So there you go. That is a very rugged composite loop. And then from this point forward, you would do what? Well, you could tie on a saddle hackle or a schlappen hackle. You could put on some ostrich and spread it around the hook. You could put on some Lady Amherst. You could do all kinds of things, but this is the idea of a composite loop. And the reason to do it is to create this nice, buggy, glistening, wiggly thing that has volume and motion. So, hope you find that interesting, and I hope that gets you started.